To the millions watching live around the world. Oh, sorry. To the 3 of you watching. Thanks, Mom. No, to the thousands watching live, welcome to the Data Mesh Readiness Assessment. My name is Adrian Estala. I lead our Data Mesh consulting practice here at Starburst. Let's get started. Before I jump into the assessment, I think it's important to start with an understanding about why we're doing this, why it's important for you to take it. And also, I want to give you some perspective on how we put the assessment together. The readiness assessment doesn't replace a strategic workshop or a formal design workshop. Rather, it's an early assessment to get you thinking about all the right things in the right way. We'll talk more about that in a second. Let's start with the why. There is a business urgency. Just got off a great session on the state of data. There is a business urgency right now to deliver data to our business teams. There's a competitive pace that's at risk. For some companies, being able to bring data forward quickly to solve business problems is a matter of survivability. I don't want to be overdramatic. I don't think I am. There is an urgency to bring data forward for most of our organizations. So taking this assessment today should help you assess where you can get started. The assessment will not certify you for running across the entire enterprise. But it will do is what I hope that it will do is get you started to think about where you might start. Where is that small scope where you can create a good pace and drive an immediate return? Where can I get an ROI today and drive value? It's not about speed, it's about pace. No, it is about speed. Believe me, your business teams want this fast. But if you can figure out where you need to move fast, then you can manage your pace. There's a balance there. That's the why. There's urgency. Now let's talk a bit about the readiness assessment. There's a big community on Data Mesh, and I can already hear them typing. Readiness assessment, it's not a maturity assessment. I get it. Here's the reality, is we're still evolving the Data Mesh, and in these communities, we're arguing a lot of the key points. I was part of an IPv6 community back in the 90s, and believe me, we had some huge arguments there. We got through it. I was part of the cloud migration communities early on in the early 2000s, dreaming of what this was going to look like, and there were arguments. That debate with a lot of smart people with different viewpoints is helpful. So I encourage you to join one of those communities, listen to the arguments, form your own opinions. But let me tell you why I think we can do a readiness assessment today. First and foremost, there are technologies that are proven that you can use right now. One of the principles in the data mesh, core element of the data mesh, is trying to reuse what you already have in place. We're going to keep your house in order. It's about using the data stores you already have, the data stores that are already working for you. It's about using a proven technology like Trino. Our technology has been around for 10 years. It's proven, it's tested, it scales, it performs. When you're able to use proven technology to connect data to bring it forward, that's a big win. That within itself is a tremendous win for your business teams that are just trying to get data. Now, if you think about the transformation side, because we appreciate data mesh is still evolving, as we get through today's session, you're going to get a better understanding for all the different areas you have to think about. That transformation also should not be new to you. We've been doing transformations for at least 10 years. Raise your hand if you did a cloud transformation. Raise your hand if you've done an outsourcing transformation. Raise your hand if you've done any kind of a IaaS or PaaS or SaaS transformation. Remember those words? Those were big transformations. You can put your hands down, nobody can see you. But those were big transformations that we all learned from. We can, as we start our own data mesh journeys, we can lean on the transformation experience. We can lean on the technologies that are proven to get started. It's a journey. It's your destination, but there's no reason why you can't get started right away. Speaking of getting started, let's start the assessment. The assessment covers 4 areas. Are you ready for the data mesh? You're ready if you start to think through the strategy. Someone just said it on the previous session. You have to start with strategy. And when you're able to align your own data mesh vision with your business strategy, with your data strategy, that's a major first step. The next thing you need to do is start thinking about how the mesh fits into your architecture. You want to think about how the mesh is going to impact people and culture. You want to think about how you're going to integrate your existing governance. There's a lot we want to do when we start talking about data mesh principles. Federated computational governance, huge vision, great ideas, a lot of hope, but we're not going to get there overnight. So when we think through each of these areas, the idea is to try to rely on what you already have in place today and then build a roadmap for what we want to build over time, where we're trying to get to. What I want you to do as we think through these areas is I want you to start to try to imagine a use case in your organization. There's 2 steps to this assessment. The first step is to take the assessment. It's an online assessment. I hope Cindy will post a link for those of you that don't already have that. Once you take that online assessment, the second step is to have a conversation. We're going to have a 40-minute conversation today, but I'd love to have that 4-hour conversation with your results to talk specifically about your business. For today, try to imagine one of your use cases. And then as we work through each of the areas, let's see if we can try to make that valuable to you, if we can make sense of these examples in a way that you understand, in a way that makes sense for your business. Start with strategy. Hopefully most of you have a data strategy or a digital transformation strategy to start with. Your CDO or your digital leaders, they've put a lot of work into getting these working. This maps data capabilities to business outcomes. You want to focus on those data capabilities. Now, if you don't have a data strategy, most of you should. Go talk to your CDO. If you don't have one, then go look at the business strategy. But when you start to look at the data capabilities you're going to need to deliver that business strategy, there's some things you want to look for. There's some things that other groups in your IT function might step away from. They're hard. They're challenging. There may be a migration program that's 2 years down the path that's going to deliver a capability for your business to do something. Be bold with your data mesh strategy. Pick an area where you think you can add immediate help. Pick an area where integration is going to be a challenge. I've got multiple stores. I'm going to wait 2 years to migrate them. Why not bring that data together now? I'm trying to build a democratization approach. How am I going to get these 2 areas to share data? Start talking about a data mesh. Start talking about domains and data products and using those capabilities to build confidence, to build a framework for sharing. Let's talk about a couple examples. If you don't already have an example, you can steal one of mine. Some of your organizations are out there looking to grow their ecosystem. Maybe through merger or through some type of acquisition, the organization's growing. On the IT side, that means we need to really start thinking about how we're going to integrate those different data stores. We don't know where they are. We don't know how they're run. We don't know how they're configured, but they're going to be part of your infrastructure. They're going to be part of your architecture. Great opportunity for you to use a mesh concept to connect those data stores. And when they come on board, we're going to need to share data that's never been shared before. It's a new area. It's never been brought together before. Democratization is going to be important. Great opportunity for a mesh. Some of you may be thinking about opportunities in your business where we're looking to enhance existing business processes. We have to deliver faster. We have to do more for the customer. We have to bring more forward. Those opportunities are using existing data stores. But for whatever reason, we've not been able to use the data in those existing data stores to really enhance or improve the business processes in the past. We have to do something different. Great opportunity for us to use a data mesh with existing stores, bring that data forward now so that we can look at how we can drive analytics, how we can drive automation, how we can simplify that process. A lot of you in your companies are actually looking at brand new business models, a new way of working, a new way of driving your business, new revenue, new customers, and these are exciting because these types of scenarios typically call for building new environments. Maybe it's a new lake or a new warehouse, a new application, and connecting those to old environments. You might be thinking, well, we're going to have to migrate that or merge that together, but you don't have to. You can create a mesh model to start to create and connect all those environments today. Now, any one of those examples hopefully fits your solution, or hopefully fits what you guys are thinking. I want you to pick one. Pick one example. All right, let's go to the next step. Architecture. Whew, it's a tough one. When we talk to architects, there's always 2 big questions. The first one is the loudest one. First question is, show me how it works. I get it. As an architect, we've been doing migrations for a long time. SAP consolidations, cloud migrations, application portfolio migrations, and now we're talking about big lake migrations. Now somebody's going to come around and tell me, hey, you've been doing it wrong. You don't need to do that. All you need to do is put it on a mesh. It's a big hurdle to overcome. It's not what we're used to. We've been used to migrations. We know they take a long time. We know they're expensive. We know they're disruptive. That's the only way to do it. But when you sit down and look at the technology that's available, the alternative to that migration, I think you'll be impressed. That's why I came here. When I sit down and looked at what we can do with Trino and Presto, kind of bringing that data source, I don't care where it is, and connecting to it, bringing that data forward quickly, it's impressive. I encourage you to reach out to one of our architects, have them walk you through exactly how we do it. I've sat through some of those, and it's always exciting to see customers say, oh, cool, it works. So I hope you'll get the same excitement and the same level of enthusiasm that I got when you have that session. But what I really want to talk about today on the architecture side is how we make a mesh fit. If you're with me so far on the fact that it works, or that we can get started to make it work, then the next question is, where do I start? How does it fit? So let's go back to your examples, right? We said there's some key strategic examples. You need to focus on one. So think about one of those use cases, whether it was maybe a growing ecosystem with mergers, maybe it was enhancing a current business process, maybe it was building a new business process, maybe you've got your own. Whatever use case you have in mind, let's start thinking about the data stores that you're going to need to pull data from. Now, if we were doing a migration, this is where it might really get difficult. How are we going to merge all that data? It's on-premise, it's in the cloud, it's multi-cloud. It becomes very challenging. But in a mesh, I don't care where the data is. We can connect to it. We can bring it forward. And so in a mesh model, when you start thinking about that design, I have a use case. Where is the data going to need to come from? That's step one. Step two, then, is you want to start thinking about how you are going to design this for the business. Say it again. How are you going to design this for the business? You want to have a business person in the room, or somebody that understands the way that the business teams use the data when you start talking about integration. Brand new concept. The data mesh is designed for business consumption. So when you start thinking about the integration challenges, how am I going to bring this data together? As soon as you mention the word domain or data product, you want to have someone on the business side in the room. Let's start talking about how you use the data. Let's start talking about what you're going to use it for. Really important step. And inevitably, for all of us, when we start integrating data together more efficiently, we're going to need to start sharing that data. And that's an exciting step when you can get there. But I've been in those discussions. It's hard to convince leaders to share data. We've never shared the data before. This new model calls for sharing. Didn't need it before, now you do. And so when you start talking about data democratization, you need to understand that the mesh is designed to democratize. Those are great opportunities for you to create some value. You got to think through all these elements. They're all important, and access is equally, or probably one of the more challenging areas. But when you start looking at data access, you want to try to, if you can, consider how you do access today. Let's get started with that. Most of your access policies are application-based. That's okay. Let's start using some of those rules. For some of you that are more advanced, you've already created some specific data access models, even better. If you're like me, I had data access models, but I had different ones for every lake. That's how I used to operate. If you are trying to work in a mesh, you want to start to create a consistent access model across the end, if you will, right? There's consistency that you can leverage, but it's going to be a journey, and you have to think through how we get started and how we want it to look over a longer term. Now, if we're comfortable with the architecture, the next thing we want to do is think about people and culture. Who is going to use that architecture? How are we going to get teams to use the tools? How are we going to get teams to start to really drive data products? You teach them how to use the tool, whether that's Power BI, we had a great Tableau presentation yesterday, or whether it's a more advanced tool that's doing automation, you can teach them. They can learn. They'll get really good. One of the most impressive things I've seen in the last 5 years is a do-it-yourself program that was just amazing, that just empowered business teams to drive data, demand more data. So believe me, you can teach them how to use the tools. But once you teach them how to use the tools, then you got to teach them how to use the data products. And maybe if you're really brave and if you're really aggressive, you can teach them how to start to build their own data products. Data mesh is about self-service. It's about empowering the business. But there's a lot of literacy, a lot of training, if you will. There's some competencies you really have to work to build. Ethics and privacy for the domain owners. They are data owners. They are accountable. They're custodians of data. On the product side, you might also need to teach these data product owners, if they're not already part of the business, it's really, really important that those data product owners understand the business they're serving. That's a key success item. They need to understand the business teams they're serving. That's going to make the data products much more useful. Now, the big G, governance. This is the hard one. There's a lot to think about here. First thing I want to make sure that we're all clear on is when you start to think about your data mesh and you start to kind of create that first step forward, you want to rely on the governance processes you already have in place. Don't go reinvent them. I know that governance is hard. Believe me, I know that it's difficult. And a lot of the challenges we've had in the past, we've made improvements, but we're not where we need to be. You want to first rely on what you already have in place. And then you want to start thinking about where you can improve. Data mesh introduces some really nice concepts like federated computational governance. The federation idea is to say that we can create a consistent governance framework end-to-end across the mesh, but you can define some levers that will allow different domain teams to adapt that governance to fit their organization. Think about a domain that's dealing with highly sensitive data. They might apply a higher lever, if you will, higher level of governance than a team over here that wants to open up all their access. You want consistent governance. You want to create some autonomy with your domain owners so they can start to manage that on their own. But there's some advantages there with the data mesh. Another advantage of the data mesh is when you start really thinking about the products and how we're going to build data products and how you're going to use data products. So we kind of go back and start to bring in all the different elements together. We start thinking about strategy. We start thinking about architecture. We start thinking about the culture. And now we're thinking about governance. So let's bring these concepts together on the product set. There is a big win I talked about earlier. So there's an urgency to get going. There is an ability with existing technology. There is an ability with existing processes to get going right away. You're ready for a mesh. It doesn't mean that your mesh is going to look the same in 2 years or in 3 years, but it means that you're ready to get started. What does a product look like when you get started? In Starburst, right off the bat, before we start talking domains and products, you're able to access via query data sets. You create views for data. It's not a product. It's a great view for a business person to get data. For a lot of teams or data consumers, that's a huge step. For most of our customers, that's a big first step when you're able to kind of get them the information. When you start introducing products, and we understand products is the data, it's the metadata, it's the descriptions and the code, it's the design of the data product itself, so it's designed for somebody to use, it's the concept of interoperability, all of that is the data product, right? So you can't just say one thing and that's a product. No, you got to be able to deliver all of that. That takes governance, it takes some discipline, and you want to build that over time. But the important part there about that data product is that you want to make sure that you can share it. You want to make sure that other people are able to use it. There's great value when you build domains and data products that a number of different teams are able to connect to, that a number of different teams are actually able to use. Here's another key element when you start thinking about governance. Master data. We're not moving your data. We're not copying your data. We're not storing your data anywhere else. Your data stays at the source. Master data stays at the source. If you're a risk team or a legal team thinking about how we're going to deal with data sovereignty, how we're going to deal with master data issues, master data stays at the source. Your retention policies, your sovereignty policies, all those still work with the data at the source. We're not changing that data. There's one master source, and there it is. That's an incredible advantage. Here's where I'm going to get a little bit imaginatory. Is that a word? I want to help you guys kind of spread your imagination a little bit. Thinking about applying data science to governance. There are already companies out there, I've seen some in the past year, that use data science to help you improve data quality. Fantastic. You can go across a broad data set and you can look for quality issues. You can highlight them, and maybe you start to find ways to improve that data quality automatically. Can you imagine doing that on a mesh? There are data tools out there or AI tools out there that can go out there and help you with metadata. They fill in the metadata. Fantastic. That's amazing. Again, you can do that on a mesh. And so I think you start to think about the broader ecosystem. When we start thinking about a consistent data mesh, and the ability to bring other capabilities into it, like AI. Imagine an AI engine that's learning the way you use data products and starts to, on its own, create and suggest new data products. That's impressive. So there's a lot that we can imagine here. There's a lot that's available today, but when we start thinking more broadly about the ecosystem, I think it's important to think big. The playbook. So what have we done? We've thought through a couple of use cases. We've thought through strategy. And hopefully you guys are familiar with your data strategy or your digital transformation strategy. You've picked a use case. We've talked about how that use case ties back into your architecture. What sources do I need to pull together? How might I organize those sources into domains? How might those domains start to create data products, which is the data and the metadata and the design element that's focused on the business and the lineage and the history and everything else that we use to create a data product. We talked about making sure that the community, the culture, the people in your organization, that they become truly data-driven, that we teach them how to use the tools, that we teach them how to use data products. And then we talked a bit about governance. Start with what you have, and then build upon that, because there are some things in the data mesh that are going to help you work more efficiently. Now you're ready to look at a plan. And if you've talked with me one-to-one before, you probably saw the detailed version of this, and we don't have enough time today to go through all the detail. But what I think we can do today is start to really kind of break apart at a high level why each of these steps are important. Now, in a broad community, I think most people would look at this and pick out 20 things they would do differently. That's the beauty of a community. When you sit down in a small group and start to think about what's important to you, we just had a conversation that's going to help you shape your scope, and it's going to help define your pace, and ultimately going to help you kind of pinpoint the area where you're going to create value. As we define those things, and you start thinking about a plan, how am I going to actually do that? Here's an idea, right? And I think there's some concepts here that most of us will agree to, right? First concept is, I think you can start small and move fast. I call that first row at the top, I call it my 90-day plan. Maybe it's a 120-day plan for some, but should not be that long, right? You should be able to, from start to finish, create an initial MVP for your data mesh. It doesn't mean you have every element of the mesh implemented. It means that you're focused, laser focused on what that business team needs. And if all they need right now is data being brought across into domains, into some basic data products, maybe it's 2 domains, maybe it's just 3 data products, that's okay, that's a starting point. Because you're going to get some incredible learnings with that Pathfinder. You might realize governance wasn't that hard. Or maybe you may realize, oof, it was pretty rough. Every one of those learnings then is something you can then step back and apply to the second row, the refinement, the iteration. I like to think about this second row. If we've done a Pathfinder, and by the way, the other really nice thing about that Pathfinder is that you create friends, right? You create ambassadors, you create confidence, you get sponsors excited about what you're doing. They got this data connected in 90 days. And they're starting to show me this concept of data products, and I actually recognize them. Again, it's not everything, but you give them a taste for what it should look like, what it can look like. In the DevOps world, for this middle row here, you start to iterate on that. You refine and you make it better. I could imagine your DevOps team, small DevOps team, having a backlog of data sources. And so they're onboarding data sources onto the mesh. And maybe this DevOps team also has a backlog of domains. Some of the data sources are going to existing domains. Some of the data sources are going to new domains. And the DevOps team may also have a backlog for data products. I mean, they might be also involved in building data products. Now, that's a starting point. It's a great way to start because you can move fast. Longer term, though, it's not really what we want. It's not really a data mesh. It doesn't promote the concept of self-service. Over time, what you want through that data literacy program, through the people and culture enablement, you want your product owners and domain owners, you want them to start to take the reins. They're going to build their own products. They're going to manage their own domains, and that's fantastic. It's going to take them time to do that. And so that DevOps team is going to bridge the gap until they're ready to do that on their own. And at some point, data mesh becomes such a normal way of working in your business that you don't need the DevOps team anymore. But you're going to need them to get started. That last row is really interesting because we all know that data mesh is going to evolve. There's a lot still coming. We haven't filled in all the gaps. I talked about some great AI technologies that I think are going to be really interesting down the road. Imagine what a Calibra or an Atlan who's speaking next, would look like with data products. There's a lot that we can think about in the ecosystem. Maybe your organization is driving down a zero trust policy. Imagine a policy-based access mechanism sitting across your data mesh. Again, there are many opportunities to continue to improve and innovate your mesh. And I think what you need to do, and the purpose of that last work stream, is just to appreciate that you're going to need a team focused on continuing to build upon the mesh that you've created. The mesh that we're building now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying your mesh will be ready in 90 days. I can see somebody typing that. That's not what I said. I said that's your MVP. And I said you will grow, you will refine, you will mature over time. And I don't know what your mesh looks like. It's your mesh. It's you design how you need it to work ultimately, right? There's some principles that we all need to work by, domains, products, and self-service and governance, but ultimately you design the scope for your own mesh. Over time, you're going to want to onboard some of this innovation. And that last workstream will actually help you get there. You need to stay tuned to what's coming and integrate it when it makes sense for you. You want to bring it on board when it helps. Great. It's your data mesh. It's your scope. You define your pace. You want to run fast where you can, but you want to make sure that that pace is managed. And you define the value. You control your destination. We had a good conversation today, and again, I want to highlight that there's two parts to this assessment. And I hope you've been able to see the link online. It's 15 questions. The first part of the assessment is actually taking the assessment. The second part of the assessment is the conversation. So we've had a conversation today, somewhat of a quick discussion. I would like to turn that conversation into a longer discussion. There's some key things that we discussed that would be even more valuable if we sat down and talked about them one-to-one. So let's cover the key areas, and then maybe if we have some time, we'll cover some questions. So first key area was really about strategy. And I pleaded, if you will, and I said there's an urgency to get started. There's a business team out there waiting to get data connected today. And you're sitting on a capability that might enable that. They're maybe waiting for a migration project, and maybe that migration project is still the right thing to do, but you can take advantage of a data mesh to connect that data more quickly. And it doesn't mean that when you migrate to a different solution, that solution doesn't also become part of the mesh. Absolutely. If you decide to centralize some of your sources, they also become part of the mesh. It's simply the idea that you're going to have many different sources. You can't combine them all, and the mesh will help you bring those together in the right way. So that's the strategy piece. We talked about the architecture, and I just talked about a lot of architecture there as well. But on the architecture side, it's really important to understand that we're shifting our thinking, that you're trying to bring business teams into that conversation so that we can focus on their design. It's about designing a data mesh for the business. I mentioned some things that might be, I'm not sure that they're controversial. I said you can get started right now. You can connect data sources right now. You can bring data forward in a mesh. Your data product needs to evolve. And maybe at an onset, a lot of our customers today, they're very happy using the SQL views to get to the data. That is exactly what they need right now. And some of these customers have started to evolve, and now they're starting to actually create real data products. They're enriching them with metadata. They're enriching them with a notion of history. If you look at our product, you can see our thumbs up and our thumbs down. They're starting to manage data quality. That's a data product, right? And those will start to get better and better as we evolve. But there's a reason and there's an urgency to get started. The people and culture piece that we talked about, I don't want that to overwhelm you. And we've been doing that for some time in every other transformation program that we've done. But do think about the notion that for people and culture, it's a long-term data literacy program. And finally, we talked a bit about the governance piece. Start with what you have, and then lean on the mesh to help you improve those capabilities, to kind of help you kind of make that governance improve over time. Federated governance is fantastic when you give somebody the autonomy to manage governance in a way that makes the most sense for their domain, for their business. But you still have to manage some level of consistency. There are some, you can't change these, and there are some, you can manage these. And so trying to understand which ones make the most sense for your company is really important. Excellent. I do think we have some time for some questions. Again, please take the assessment. Encourage everyone to do that so that we can have a deeper engagement. Do we have any questions?
We do.
Awesome.
The chat has been running pretty hot. It's been a raging debate.
Did I say how much we enjoy that community? No, this is what transformation looks like. I'll tell you, these communities are fantastic because you have opposing ideas and opposing views, and that's how we transform, and that's how we learn. So can't read the chat, but what were some questions?
There's a few questions that I think we can sort of cover off in the time we've got. So I guess one of them is, what are the biggest mistakes that you've seen? You've obviously had a lot of interactions with different customers and prospects at different sort of steps in their life cycle. Feel free to change the names to protect the innocent. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Mistakes is a harsh word. I think we're all learning. I don't know. Maybe one thing I would say, and we talked about it a bit today, is don't overthink your initial domain and data product design. Let me clarify what I'm saying there. We're architects. A lot of us are architects, and so that's what we do, right? We design. This is a new way of thinking, right? And so what's going to happen when you roll out that first domain, it's going to change. When your business starts to use data products, you're going to learn what they need and how they're going to use it. It's going to change. And so you want to be able to adapt to that. If you overthink that domain design too much up front, and then you roll out a lot of detail, it's going to be harder to shift. If you roll out a simple model, I like to think about domains up front. The way I would do it is I would roll out domains that they recognize, maybe by business function or maybe by business process. There's a way to roll something out so that when they see it, they recognize it, and they are encouraged to use it. And then over time, you're just like, okay, well, what if we split this one up? What if we put these two together, right? And so you want to learn with how your business uses these domains and products. That's probably, I don't call it a mistake, but maybe call it a tip, is don't overthink that too much because it's going to change as your data mesh matures. Yeah.
I think actually you've answered some of the other questions. We had some interesting questions around structuring of domains and people and how they relate to products.
Yeah.
But I think you've kind of touched on that a little, so thank you. Another one that I guess from your experience is, again, from the different views that you've had and different experiences with different clients, can you sort of just list out some of the aspects of some of the better or the best or the best data mesh designs that you've seen?
Oof. Am I allowed to share your designs?
Again, let's change the names to protect the innocent.
Two examples. One is we've been talking with some people about, you don't even call it mesh even. We're talking about some bigger business solutions that just happen to sit on a mesh. And that's really interesting. Something everybody's working on right now is a customer 360 model. And I don't think I'm giving anything away because I'm having that conversation with a lot of different companies is, what does customer 360 look like on a mesh? Wow, right? There's a lot that we can do that. And you start thinking about domains and data products. I had a great conversation last night actually about that. I love that design, thinking bigger about the mesh. Something else that I saw recently, and I think you've seen it as well. I saw somebody with GitHub as part of their data mesh design, and they were looking to use GitHub to manage the code for their data products. Wow, man, that was like fantastic. Why is that useful? Because if you're going to build a new data product, you can search through the GitHub code and see if somebody's already written it. And if you're writing a data product that looks like something else, you can steal somebody else's code. And if you're learning how to write code, that's the best place to learn. So that to me, I saw that and I said, genius. Love it. I won't tell you who it is, but I think I can talk about it. The catalog piece, I'm starting to see more and more people put the catalog in their design. I know that we have a catalog in our solution, but I'm really excited to see what some of the big, more formal catalogs will be able to show. So anyway, there's a couple of ideas there.
So one other thing, I think you called out to Cindy to put the link to the online assessment in the chat. Yep. So I think someone asked, how does that work, and will every kind of assessment get a response? And you just can talk through that a little bit, please.
Absolutely, great question. I think the way the assessments are going to work. So when you fill out the assessment, it's 15 questions. All right, the first iteration was actually 50 questions, and so we said, I ain't going to work. No one's going to fill it out. We wanted to be nimble, and so we shortened it down to just 15 questions. And the idea here is you're going to go through there and you're going to hear a lot of the same things we discussed today. So I think that the conversation today fits very well as you start to go through the questions. Once you complete the assessment, you're going to get a response from us. What we want to do is reach out to you after that response and see how we want to progress the conversation. If some of you are ready to kind of start talking more deeply about some of the specific issues, we're ready to do that. I suspect some of you may just want to learn more about data mesh, and we can do that as well. There's some Data Mesh 101, if you will, type courses, and it depends on where you are in your journey. If you're already down the path and you've already started and you just want to talk more specifically about domain design or data product design, or if you want a demo of our product, we can do that as well. What I'm saying is you're going to get a response from us, and we will cater the meeting, whatever that next meeting is, to whatever it is that you need.